Hello and welcome. I'm Sara, and today I've got a very interesting and special guest, Peter Bort. Peter's a lawyer, but he's also a quantum biologist, and he's been on a very long and deep spiritual journey since he was about 13. Peter's going to talk about consciousness, human magnetism, as in why do some people just attract others and we love being around them. Also, having dental surgery without any pain relief, herniated discs, hypnosis, and also health mistakes and diet mistakes that he's made. So let me hand you over to Peter now. So welcome to the show, Peter. Do you want to introduce yourself properly so people can know who you are, what you do, and what we're going to talk about and what we're going to learn today? Because it's kind of a really interesting subject, and I'm really excited you're here.
I'm so psyched to be talking with you, Sara. I just feel like when I'm in your field of consciousness, anything could happen in a good way. So I'm Peter Bort. I'm trained as what we call an attorney or lawyer in the United States. I mostly put my work efforts into mediation, which is a form of peace work on the planet. And I'm 64 years old, which means in my country, I'm just about to qualify for our health program for elders. And I, about 5 years ago, became very interested in the quantum biology circadian approach to wellness. And and the cool thing, Sara, is that as your viewers will know, you are trained in hypnotism and you really assist people with this methodology. Well, I've had experience with being a hypnotic subject. And so when I was 18 years old, I was taking a class in college with a teacher who practiced hypnosis. And my first experience of that was, well, I think what you refer to as stage hypnosis, so in front of an audience. And he had me selling popcorn to the audience. I volunteered, and it was wonderful. It was really a fun, strange experience. And then not long after, I needed very invasive oral surgery. I needed to have what are called impacted wisdom teeth extracted. I believe 4 of them. And so what happened was I went to the teacher and I said, I know you mentioned in one of the lectures that people can accomplish the equivalent of anesthesia with hypnosis. Are you game for, trying this out on me? And he says, well, I don't have too much experience with the surgical setting, but I'm game. So we ended up in a dentist, an oral surgeon's office. And in those days, the suction and all the systems went through the chair. And so he put me in the state of hypnosis. I'm in the chair. The dentist cuts me all open, and I'm feeling no pain. I'm great. The chair breaks. The suction doesn't work. They have to switch me to another chair. So now the real test is, will this hypnotic state endure through this interval? And it did. And I didn't have any swelling. I certainly didn't have any infection. And I didn't use one of my painkiller pills that were prescribed for me. So I had a great outcome with that. And then this guy, Tony Robbins, who's kind of a motivational guy, comes along. In 1987, I do his firewalk. Now, Sara, I don't know if you've experienced a firewalk or your viewers have, but I can tell you that it took a lot for me to put my bare feet onto hot burning coals. But I did, and a bunch of us did that day. And Tony was doing a form of hypnosis, is what I would tell you. So he didn't work with me individually to hypnotize me, but he essentially knows how to hypnotize a whole group to be able to firewalk safely. So those are my experiences with hypnosis. And really what was unique about both experiences was it showed me there is a lot more going on than nuts and bolts, skin and bone, the things we can see. There's a lot of things we can't see, a lot of things we can't explain. And so the quantum approach to wellness has some of that in it. But the quantum approach to wellness, I would tell you, is more than just being in the sun and eating seafood and wearing blue blockers at night. That some of us are really curious about how things work at an even deeper level. And so when I was 13 years old, I had kind of a crisis of consciousness where I just thought, what's the point? Why am I even here? What's the point of living? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I kind of came around to the notion that there was continuity, that as an energy unit, my consciousness maybe was not limited just to this one physical embodiment, that maybe it had some continuity back through time and maybe forward. And so I connected into something with that that gave me some kind of meaning and willingness to continue in what was, I experienced as kind of an unpleasant, adolescent interval of life. So I know, the question is, have I met anybody famous? Mm-hmm. And the person I met when I was around that age was a singer named Pete Seeger. And he's what we call a folk singer in the United States. And he was a very influential person for good things on the planet. So he, in my way of looking at it, he raised the consciousness level, not just for himself and his family, but for everybody. And so I got to meet him, which was wonderful and inspiring. Now, biggest wellness mistakes I've ever made in my life. Let's start with the Pritikin diet.
The what?
The Pritikin diet.
Okay.
This was a U.S. cardiologist who postulated that if we had a lot of carbs in our diet and very little fat, and we lowered our cholesterol precipitously, we would be so much healthier. And I can tell you, I ended up in my mid-20s with almost no energy. I was an empty shell energetically after being on that diet for a number of months.
Was that invented by Ansel Keys? Is that because obviously you look about 45 or 50? I didn't realize your age. So we have to go back a long way to when you were that age, sort of like 40 years. So was that...
It's a long time ago, Sara.
Yeah. I think he had lots of people around, because fat was really demonized then. And the viewers are sort of familiar with Ansel Keys and sort of fudging the data and the cholesterol lies. And we know for certain that very low fat and high carb was a big deal then. So do you want to elaborate a bit more on what this diet looked like so people can understand what you were eating?
Carbs and avoiding animal proteins and not eating, much fish at all. Just it's a terrible diet, Sara, and that's why I describe that. Feeling so washed out and burned out in my mid-20s in the 1980s. So that was a mistake. Another mistake, there was a guy who had a eat right for your blood type diet, and I really dived into that. And he decided I was a natural vegetarian. And so you can just imagine, Sara, a vegetarian diet, and he was having me eat something every 2 hours, so totally out of ketosis, no possibility of ketosis, the way he was having me eat. And once again, difficult to muster energy, difficult to have a great outlook on life on a vegetarian diet. So that was mistake number 2.
So what blood type were you? Because I've come across this quite a lot. And would you say there's any truth in it at all, or are you against it so much because of your experience?
Oh, no, I actually think the model's brilliant. I think the way he applied it was just a little off course. So I definitely believe that our blood types influence what what stomach acid levels we produce and all kinds of things that are important to know. So I'm an A blood type, which he referred to as a natural vegetarian. And they're allowed to eat some fish. So I didn't completely perish because I was eating some fish. So that was a mistake. Another mistake, Sarah, was I thought, I've got this tap water coming into my house. I don't want to be a consumer of plastic bottles or maybe even a lot of glass bottles and all that for spring water. I'll just do reverse osmosis on my tap water. Brilliant idea. Well, the problem was I didn't add back any minerals. And so one of the house dwellers actually developed osteopenia during this little adventure. Which is something where the bones kind of lose density because they didn't get enough minerals. So that was a mistake. And we now know in the quantum biology world that the more alive your water is, just go up to the spring in the mountain, fill up your container with that natural spring water, or if you're fortunate to have a really nice well, drink your well water. And there's so many ways better than just a straight, reverse osmosis. And water is hugely important to wellness. We talk about light, water, and magnetism. Get water right. There's a lot about how to get the light right and the magnetism right. And we're going to talk a little bit about subtle energies, which, in a way, you could think of that as magnetic, right? Maybe not measurable, but have you ever had the experience of someone walks in a room that you're in and you just feel like there's something coming off this person? It's good. It feels good. I'm drawn to this. There's something magnetic about what happens in a human body. And I'll give you the example. And this fits into my mediator, hat. So the Dalai Lama has a long-time translator into the French language that he works with, Matthew Ricard. And Matthew Ricard is a mindfulness meditator. So every day he spends quite a bit of time in meditation, like a lot of the monks do. Now, since 1985, I've been a regular mindfulness meditator. So this practice of mindfulness meditation is something really all through my sinews. So Matthew Ricard, this Stanford professor, does an experiment where he finds the most disagreeable, awful academic personality on the campus and puts him in a room with this Matthew Ricard. And honestly, nobody could stand this academic guy. And so they were both hooked up to the equivalent of lie detector technology that measured all those indicators in the body. And initially, they both, Matthew came up a little bit, and this guy was through the roof, just hostile, because the topic was reincarnation. Oh. And so after some minutes, the academic came into a resonance with Matthew Ricard, and he came into a peaceful, kind of serene state. Now, that didn't happen because of the topic. It didn't happen because of music being piped into the room. It didn't happen because they had eaten gummies that contained. No, this was just a resonance between two humans. So I've been stalking that kind. You could talk about people walk around the planet and they're mystics or they're masters, but they have something that people want. And the cool thing about them is they can explain to a little kid how the universe works. They don't need a whole big dogma. They don't need a group mind. They don't need a group speak. They don't need the things that we see in religious institutions that turn people off from their spirituality. They just need to be in a resonance with that little kid. And then the little kid gets, oh, let me listen to what they're saying, And so that's the kind of spiritual experience that I've been stalking for about 40 years. And, we could talk about how through physics, David Bohm, B-O-H-M, discovered a way of looking at how all this works, which he called the implicate order. And we could talk about Rupert Sheldrake and how does the dog know exactly when the owner's coming home? So there's a field, whether it's the implicate order, whether it's a unified field, whether it's a morphic field, however you want to characterize it. We know there's a lot more going on. And so we have this this kind of medical industrial insurance complex. We had Dwight Eisenhower, who was a US president. His last speech after 2 terms as our president said, beware of the military industrial complex. And so he saw something happening that wasn't so good for our country and the world. And something's developed, this medical industrial insurance complex that has kind of kept people in a very granular, nuts and bolts biochemistry approach.
Oh, like Rupert Sheldrake would call it the mechanistic biologists.
I get that. So it's so nice. I think a lot of us in this quantum health sphere, we realize there's something more. We realize it's not all explainable in terms of things that can be measured. So there is this other world that we're enmeshed with. And whether you want to call it the ether, whether you want to call it the etheric, mystics have talked about that we have an astral level or astral realm apart from this physical realm. They've talked about a kind of a level that has a lot of mental energy captured. They've talked about a causal level, which is kind of like cause and effect, and an etheric level. And then some mystics really say, look, there's a level that's free and that's not being dragged down by anything physical, that is really kind of running the show. And the way it works is you're an energy unit, you're a soul, and you're having an experience. God has issued, or some intelligence has issued you forth as this experiencer. And by experiencing, contributing back into that unified field, that consciousness, that God consciousness, this experience. And so here we are, all connected and all seeking that. And it's like we all have our individual curriculum in a way. Earth is a school. It's a great school for learning. We all have each soul has its own individual curriculum. And we've piled onto this curriculum from previous embodiments. So we already come in with a lot of stuff we need to balance and learn. So then the thing that I've always been drawn to is, okay, that's very cause and effect. And we talk about karma, this action happens, so this action has to balance it. And that's very cause and effect. And wouldn't it be wonderful if there's a level above that, in a way, not as affected by it in a way, which some mystics have called grace. It's kind of unearned, goodness. You could also think of it as we just don't understand that law. Like the law of cause and effect, a little kid gets that, right?
So I think it's in every religion, because in the Kabbalah, for Jewish religion, it's called tikkun. You have to come back, and anything didn't do or complete in your past life, you've got to do it this life. And that's why committing suicide in every single faith is so terrible, because no matter what, you'll come back and face the same challenge again. So just that people know, we're not against any, we're not talking about any religion. It's actually ubiquitous across spirituality, this idea of having our souls have a particular task, and we've got things from a past life to do, and then we've got a specific journey. And then I wanted to also just backtrack a bit for you. So for people who are interested in this, I mean, I've read stuff about Dolores Cannon, and then you were mentioning somebody else online that people can dip into, because for some people this might be so massive for them that they really get turned off by it, but then for other people it resonates. Do you have any resources that for somebody who's just starting, so they could look at it gently?
Oh, I do. And so in terms of the Earth is a School approach, I have a certification from a place called the University of Santa Monica, and that is based in California, but it's a worldwide platform because of Zoom. And so they are incredibly good at assisting us to heal all the stuff, all the baggage, all the stuff that's just in the way of creating a wonderful, happy life. So that's University of Santa Monica. We've got a guy named Robert Waterman and his wife, Carrie Thorne, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And they are masters of consciousness and masters of working with people. And I'm currently studying with them to learn something called Noetic Balancing, Noetic, which works with the aura. So all of the work with the person who presents is done without really touching their body. And yet, absolutely breakthrough, amazing stuff that comes forward. There's also yeah.
I remember I asked you, I suppose, so people, in case they've got lost, that we're talking now above hypnosis, above things like Jose Silva, because I remember I brought up something with you and you said to me, oh, that's really brilliant, but it's this much of it. And Sara, I want to tell you about all the rest. And now what you're describing is sort of the next level for people who are really into this kind of work, like working with the ether, consciousness, and beyond. And maybe just want to sort of repeat what it was you said that last technique was, just so that people can catch it.
Yeah, Noetic Balancing. There's another group that I've been studying in for since 1985, which is called the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, founded by a guy named John Roger, who I loved being around him because he was like one of those Matthew Ricard type guys. He was one of those guys you just felt so good to be around him, and you couldn't really explain it. And he had a real gift to work with people's consciousness. And he laid out a whole massive volume of teachings that are as relevant today as they were all those years ago. So yeah, I would tell you that the Silva method, hypnosis. So these are, you're working in the kind of the world of cause and effect, and you're working very strategically and very effectively. I mean, look at my dental experience, and the firewalk experience just opened up, a whole nother way of seeing myself as capable. So it's great stuff. Now, we also have this kind of approach to manifesting things, like it's a big thing now, and the TikTok manifestors and all that. So here's how I look at that in terms of the seen and the unseen, the manifest, the unmanifest. It's kind of like, what field do you want to tap into? So do I want to put out to the universe that I want to have $1 billion by this time next year? Okay. Now think about it. My soul came in with its curriculum, and maybe my soul doesn't need to learn how to fight off sycophants and how to run from tax authority. Maybe it doesn't need to be a billionaire. Okay. So if this manifestation I'm wanting is not coming from a heartfelt, aligned place, I'm thinking it's not going to be terribly successful. So when I'm kind of asking the universe for things, or people would call it praying, whatever, I don't see the universal consciousness or God as the great bellhop in the sky. It's just going to deliver everything to me. So for instance, let's say I've herniated discs in my back, which I did about 10 years ago, and I'm in massive pain and I can't move and I can't do anything and focus. Should I just say to that consciousness, take this from me? Okay, just take it from me. No, I don't think so. I think the request is, may I learn what I need to learn in this, and may it be as graceful and easy as possible, and may all the magical resources show up for me, and all of this for the highest good of all concerned. So once I step up into a field of for the highest good of all concerned, I mean, like if you ask a little kid and you say to the little kid, you get the idea that we are all connected, that we are in some level, we're all connected. The little kid's going to go, of course. So at that level where we're all connected, it's important for me to recognize that we're all connected. So let's say somebody's really being a pain in the ass to me in my life. I don't want to put out to the universe, could you please kill that person or make them feel as much pain as I think they put me through? That's not a smart use of that kind of consciousness at all. So what I want to do is I want to step up into that place of the highest good of all concerned, and I want to tap into a creative consciousness. Let's call it a co-creative consciousness. So it's kind of like I'm being allowed to co-create with that consciousness. And guess what? The more I keep choosing that, and the more I keep aligning with that, and the more I keep my eye single and focused, not so much would we say positive thinking, but positive focus, I'm going to become better at it. And I'm going to make better choices what I ask for. And so that has been my experience, Sara, so far. And wow, so it's a point where I just totally love my life. I love all the people in my life. I love what I'm involved in. I love this community. The quantum biology community is amazing. So
Did
that's what I'm
your
practicing.
discs get better? Your back pain?
Yes. So the thing that really, it took years, Sara, and I didn't have surgery, and I didn't have steroidal injections, and I tried everything. And I could give you a big laundry list. So homeopathy was helpful. Feldenkrais method of body awareness, very helpful. The things that tip me over into 110% wellness at this point were the quantum biology approaches combined with something that I know you're familiar with, which is myofascial release. And the one that I've been working with is the John F. Barnes approach to that.
Oh, yes, yeah. Because I've done John Barnes and Tom Myers, and also I trained in somatics. Not Feldenkrais is really expensive, but for people who aren't sure what it is, it's sort of, you might be able to explain it better, but it's very primal movements, and it basically gets you out of the startle reflex and just teaches you how to move again. It's like sensory motor amnesia, when in simple language, your brain and your muscles and nerves are not connecting properly and you've forgotten how to move. So definitely myofascial release and all of those techniques are something that people can really resonate with. But what we've done is we've kind of gone back to mechanics and biology. So back to how on a spiritual, etheric, consciousness and aura level did you find that this helped with your pain and your health as well? Because we can all imagine how a massage or myofascial release or movement would stop pain, but maybe you want to elaborate more on what you're really passionate about pain being something that's not just in, I know our brains create it and our body do, but maybe there's another layer to it, and maybe I'm wrong.
You're so on it. It's information. So pain is information. And much of our medical industrial insurance complex is just focused on dulling sensation. Pain is bad, let's dull it. Or symptom is showing up, let's suppress it. And so, right, that's maybe not the best approach. At least it isn't for me. The best approach, and this is where the mindfulness meditation. So if I didn't have that solid foundation of mindfulness meditation, which really is a way to come into the present moment, and I was experiencing all that massive back pain and just suffering in a way, and my mind would go ahead, what's it going to be like when I'm doing this, or year from now, or all this kind of stuff, like out of the present. Anytime I did that, it amplified the misery. But being in the present moment, I could just breathe through whatever was going on, and the Feldenkrais helped with that as well, to be present. Was that responsive to what you were asking?
Oh yeah, no, it was great, because on another level, I've found that these kind of practices, because there are so many, and we could be here for hours if I talk to you about my spiritual practices and things that I do with people, because they can seem quite unusual, but I use it more for mental health and physical pain as well. And I'm sure you have as well, that some people have tried everything for their anxiety or depression or whatever, and they come and find, as well, what we would call energy medicine, like above what Donna Eden does. We're talking about the mental things. So what's your experience with emotional pain and mental health and your techniques?
Well, when I connect into something much bigger than myself, it's easier to come into some kind of serenity, some kind of acceptance. And I've been fortunate. We talk about electrons, and we want to kind of increase our electrons that we receive in grounding and from the sun and the right kind of food. And we're looking to, do reduction of oxygen potential to get that in the best place. And we're talking about that in a nuts and bolts physical way. What if a human consciousness can have massive energy, just massive energy? And I'm not talking about the Svengali Houdini type energy. I'm talking about an energy that is as true and genuine, and I don't know what another word would be, but just pure energy. So some mystics might just get carried away with it and just want to walk around naked through Indian villages all day because they're so blissed out.
But also, isn't it very charismatic people? There are some people, and like Carrie Bennett, she's coming on the channel very soon. She's very charismatic, like you, and you just want to be with that person, and you feel safe with them, and you could tell them your whole life. And I suppose people who've tried MDMA, it's sort of that kind of feeling you get towards this particular. We're not talking about drugs now. It's just when you meet a person that's so magnetic and so charismatic. So what you're describing is how to learn how to give off that kind of energy to other people.
No, no, and I'm sorry to be like that, but I'm not doing it for other people.
Okay,
I'm doing it for me,
right?
Because I really can't be responsible for other people, right? But I'm doing it for me. I'm being selfish with a capital S,
Right.
So self-honoring, and if the side effect from being around Matthew Ricard is that people feel good and people feel serene and balanced, I'm sure he's happy to have that side effect. And yet he's really just pursuing his own curriculum on this school that's Earth. And so what I've found that I've connected into, and that brings this source of this wonderful, let's call it spiritual energy, or unified field connection, whatever you want to call it, is what some mystics call the sound current. And it's an audible life stream of God. And we know, and you've talked about this, that in terms of quantum entanglement, well, at the Big Bang, of course, we were all entangled. So from the quantum entanglement standpoint, we are all still entangled. And so we know that sound comes before light. Sound is even more original than light. So at the Big Bang, the physics people that are so much smarter than I am, they've been able to model and realize that sound happens first and then light. And so that's this sound current to be connected into is even more fundamental than light. And we talk about light, water, and magnetism in the quantum community.
I was about to correct you at the beginning and say, well, Jack Kruse will have a lot about us saying sound comes above light, but I agree with you there that sound is massively neglected, and that's what Carrie's going to talk about. But you've always got a different take on things as well, so I think I'll just let you carry on about the sound.
Yeah, so the sound is what the light rides on. And it is, we don't have anything to measure it. We don't have the Safe and Sound Pro that's going to measure the sound current or an app on our iPhone. And yet there's a way to develop the awareness of a sound current. And this is what the masters have taught. There's a man named Julian Johnson, a Western medical doctor who lived with and in community with these sound current masters in India in the prior century. And his book is brilliant. Julian Johnson, The Path of the Masters. And so there's a lineage. It's like this, Sara. You know how we have brilliant people, and often they come through the sciences, or we call them Renaissance people, or what, because they're incredibly curious. They don't get limited by dogma. And they usually kind of move the consciousness of the human race forward, just for them having been around. So if we've got an Akhenaten in Egypt, or we've got a Hermes Trismegistus, Pythagoras, Roger Bacon, to talk about the science guys.
What about Jordan Peterson? Would you say Jordan Peterson's one of these kind of people as well?
We're going to talk about that because I don't know who Jordan Peterson is.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
And
I'm sure the viewers there's going to be lots of interesting comments here, but I know what you mean. There are sort of great minds that move our consciousness forwards throughout generations, and Plato being another, and Da Vinci,
absolutely.
and there's also Jesus, of course, as well.
Yes.
Can't forget him.
Yes.
Very important man.
And
yes.
I'm going to suggest to you that they had a connection to this sound current. They might not have even used that term, but this is something that's been riding through humans ever since humans were on the planet. And so we could call it a subtle energy. It's something that the person who wants it really has to stalk in a way. And
would you call it the Messianic consciousness or the Christ consciousness, or are you talking about something above that again?
I can't say above, below. That's not a reference point I have, but I would tell you, we form consciousness through language. That's one of the ways we attract things to us. And so that's why it's really important to be careful about what I put out and what I say. Like, I don't want to say, oh, I just did something stupid. That's just like me, or those kind of things, or bad things always happen, all that kind of stuff. No, because that's not a good languaging. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, is that what we put out in language has an attraction field. And the same way with, matter is light that's been slowed down. Okay, but there's something that's involved when we realize we're co-creators with that, whatever force is manifesting things and taking things from light and subtle energies and into matter, that we want to be careful how we're putting out our language. I don't know if that fits with what you're asking.
Oh, no, that makes sense, because I was just thinking then when you were talking that when we speak, even though we finish talking, how do we know the resonance of our words don't just propagate to the other side of the world? Because where did the sound go? And I completely agree with you that, again, I was going to ask you about egregores, the idea of a thought form becoming physical or have power because so many people are thinking the same thing. But I think it's maybe for another conversation, because otherwise people will get confused. But I think maybe to wrap up, if you would like to tell people if they have never heard of what you're talking about before, what's the first steps they can start to do, maybe meditate, and if people are sort of a bit further along, where else can they go? What would be a suitable journey? With, obviously, like you said, you had to stalk it, and I think what you're saying is you've got to be hungry for it, and you're going to have to put some time and effort in if you want to connect with this source.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes it's just taking the first step, rather than seeing it as some episodic, thing to take on. Just go like, oh, let me try this one thing and see how I feel, and then maybe that leads to something more. I would tell you that there's a Facebook group called Our Thriving Mitochondria, which is something I'm very much involved in. There is every other week we hold a Zoom gathering called the Light and Wellness Gathering. It's for an hour and a half. It's under the auspices of the Heartfelt Foundation. So it's heartfelt.org is the website. And it's a great group that all have this meditative spiritual focus, but that are learning more about the quantum biology. So it's a very cool interface of people.
Oh, definitely. I know that I'm part of that group. I found the invite the other day, but also you kindly shared those videos with me, and they are profoundly, it's something that I've tried to ask you to explain, sort of 40 or 50 years of a journey in half an hour. And, I think for people who are interested in this, just being interested and being open is the first step. And again, maybe to reiterate, where can people find you or find more? Because would you prefer if people went to the Facebook group? I'll link everything in the description at the end. Or do you do consultations? Do you have a website? How can people get in touch with you, or what you're passionate about, or your mission?
I have none of that. I'm just, I still have my day job, and I'm just very interested in all of this. And if they're in our Thriving Mitochondria Facebook group, and they send me a Facebook Messenger, I will definitely be watching for that.
Okay. Anyway, there's no need for me to ask my last question about your spirituality and your beliefs, because obviously you've covered it throughout this, because I have a few sort of set questions which I have for these podcasts, but then they obviously go off in all kinds of angles. But I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a real pleasure on my Sunday afternoon to have my head blown off by you as usual. And thanks also for the links, because you always drop a different sort of thing for me to look into. You don't ever dump it all on me all at once. So it's been lovely to talk to you.
Sara, you have a brilliant, beautiful consciousness, and I just love watching where you're going with all this. It's quite majestic.
Thank you, sir.